Hi, my name is Keith White. You're tuned in to AURN Digital, and I'm here with a roundtable of some esteemed guests. So,
My name is Castell JR Barnes. I'm an author, speaker, and entrepreneur.
My name is Calvin Lyte. I'm an entrepreneur and a father.
and speaking of fathers, we're here today for Father's Day special on fatherhood.
Let's go.
And so let's jump right into it. What is your vision for fatherhood, for Black fatherhood, for men with daughters?
I don't have a daughter. I know you do,
Yeah.
so you can jump right in.
I think the first thing is, I think my vision for Black fatherhood for people of daughters is to show an alternative towards living, right? And to be that walking example, right? To say, you can take ownership of your life, right? Entrepreneurship is a valuable direction you can go in, right? Even when you doubt yourself, it's okay to be doubtful, and it's okay to go through humanly things. Also, what I think with Black fatherhood is to show that we can be super sensitive. Like, I've cried in front of my daughter when I was going through some sugar honey iced tea, right? And it's okay. Like, I think we need to show that Black men can be vulnerable, but still be firm, right? And I think that's the long game, right? To show that, and it will kind of take away like gender roles too, right? Like, oh, a man's this way, an alpha's this way, right? And then, oh, omega is this way, where in all actuality, an alpha doesn't necessarily need to be first. It doesn't necessarily need to be at the forefront. You can be in the foreground or in the background, making executive decisions, right? So it's to, my vision for fatherhood for daughters is take control of your life, enforce it, and be vulnerable, and being number third on the scene can still leave you in a very, very executive and very nice spot. And to be that walking example too. Don't just tell your kids to be something, like you have to be a prime, right? So a biggest thing, I wasn't an entrepreneur full time before she was born, but now I'm showing her, if you want to write books, look at daddy, right? If you want to be an entrepreneur, look at daddy. If you want to expand, look at daddy, or look at your mom too.
That's a really good example, because I think, especially for young, I have two boys, so I don't have a daughter, but I've always believed that a woman's first example of, a man, or the type of man she chooses later on, that example comes from her father. She sees how you carry yourself, how you treat her mom, how you treat other women, how you just generally present yourself as a man. So I always feel like that example, I told my wife before, I was like, if we have a girl, I'm gonna spoil the crap out of her, because any dude coming after me is gonna have to live up to my example. I want to make sure she makes decisions based on, things that I set. Not to say that, but that we set as a family, as a couple. But having two boys, my conversation around girls is a little different. My oldest is 13, he's going to be 14. And he's in that phase now where he's experiencing and seeing and is influenced by, and you fill in the blanks. So the conversation more so for me and to him is around respect and space.
Absolutely.
Like really just understanding that, no is a very important, powerful word, and you have to respect the space of other women, of the girls that are around. There's certain things. One day, he dances, and he probably get embarrassed when he sees this, but he dances, and I went to pick him up from the dance studio, and I noticed that he was like hiding. He was like had his hand low. Let's just say that. I was like, come on, pick him up. I said later to everybody, I didn't want to embarrass him, so he just kind of walked outside. I was like, everything is all right? He was like, he didn't want to tell me, but I was like, I know what's happening. He's like, because you're in the dance studio, the girls are there. You're saying, he's like, yeah, it's embarrassing. I was like, listen, that's a natural thing. You shouldn't be afraid of it. You shouldn't, be ashamed of it. But other people might be uncomfortable by it. And so I think it's how you make that person feel when that happens. So the conversation is
oh man,
is a little
so
different.
it sounds like from what both of you have said, though, you know, from your son being comfortable in who he is, and in your response that it's about being not being too firm, but not being too soft. Absolutely. It really is about being human.
Yeah.
And the thing that's problematic for me to hear that is that when we're talking about daughters, what is our vision for daughters? But we're talking about ourselves. And we're spending all this time talking about ourselves and being comfortable because there's been so much energy spent into dehumanizing the black man, the black father. And so we spend so much time, when we're supposed to be talking about daughters, we spend so much time talking about how we're human. And I think that as we we unpack like how that happens, right, it's important for us to make sure, pivoting this back to our daughters now, right? I have 5, right? And so pivoting the conversation about daughters back to...
Bless you, man.
But pivoting the conversation back to the focus, which are the women, right? And how we serve. How do we adequately and properly serve the population of daughters as black fathers? We have to make sure that we are fully complex human beings that accept ourselves, so that they can be fully complex human beings who accept themselves, so that when they look to be in a relationship or not be in a relationship, right? Because that is the reality of humanity. Everyone's not going to be in the same type of relationship. And so having them define themselves and being comfortable and unapologetic in how they define themselves and saying to the world, this is who I am and this is who you are to me. And I think that being able to being able to recognize our humanity, being able to have our daughters recognize their humanity and be fully complex who they are, layered, you know, and not apologizing. You know? That's my vision.
You speaking to me right now. Because I think about standard, right? And, you know, we talk about the roles of mom and dad, and I feel there's a special thing with daughters and dad, right? And it's unbearable, right? Like the mom's are nurturing, you come from them, but the dad is the affirmation, right? And I tell her like my daughter now, you know, she might get teased sometime, right? I'm like, you know how beautiful you are? Like you have to understand that people don't necessarily have something towards you. They're going through something.
Exactly.
Right? And I feel when you said being unapologetic about who you are, it's setting that standard in a bar. Right? And sometimes, you know, we want a certain life, but you have to attract it based on who you are, self-awareness wise. So I'm going to tell you, this is where you come from. I'm going to set the bar here. Now, if you choose to go below, that's up to you. Right? I'm going to expose you. We're going to travel. We're going to see the world. We're going to move around. Right? So if you choose something below the standard that's already set in front of you, right? It's kind of, and it draws back to communal things. It draws back to our community. We was already on the shoulders of Thurgood Marshall, MLK. Say, all right, if you go below this, this is what you're going to deal with. But you could seek this black excellence and really have this life. Right?
It's important. I mean, Thurgood Marshall, MLK are important, but it's important to go back to Francis. It's important to go back to Lorraine Hansberry. It's important to go back to Moses. Who, you know,
I'm with you.
It's important to go back to these women who were at the vanguard of every movement, but were at the same time the most marginalized in those same movements. And it's important.
That's right.
To highlight these, you know, these names and these women. The other thing that that's been interesting is the role, right? Like I think in my own home, my partner is the boss. She is the head of household, right? And it's almost forced upon her because I have such a friendly and jovial relationship with all of the girls that she has to be like the enforcer that says, no, like these are the things that are important for us to progress. These are the things that are sustainable for our family. And these are the practices that we need to be you know, that we need to be adhering to.
There has to be one.
There has to be one,
like
right? And it's not me.
The buck stops here,
right? Right. And it's not me.
Yeah.
But how do you think the perception of fatherhood has changed with regard to daughters from let's say the 60s till now?
I feel, again, I'm coming from a Caribbean background, and I feel like, you know, fathers, like you'd mentioned before, I feel like black fathers and the relationship to their daughters has always been something that's been very sacred.
Yeah.
That's been very tight in my experience, my exposure. The changes that's happened over time, I feel like there's a lot less because of maybe lack of father figures in their lives. There's a lot less exposure, I think, for some women to, you know, quality men, you know, quality examples of what a man should be and what a man could be. And I think that, you know, going down the path of social media and certain influences, I think sometimes, you know, we have to remember that, you know, that doesn't define the relationship between a father and a daughter. Those things that we see, meaning videos, I'm being very specific now, meaning videos, meaning, you know, certain things you might be exposed to on social media of how a woman presents herself, you know, online or whatever it is. We have to, as parents, and I think that's the challenge, meaning 60 years ago versus today, we as parents have to show our daughters and show our children in general that those representations doesn't have to be the thing for them. You know, they can be, you know, just as successful. They can be just as popular, because I think that's mostly what it is, a popularity contest. Yeah. But not necessarily, you know, devalue who they are, you know, and fall back on those things that that, you know, we know as good, upstanding values, you know, that they should bring to a relationship, and, you know, how they should treat themselves.
Yeah, I have upstanding values is kind of like an exercise in existentialism for me. I don't know what upstanding values are. What I do impress upon, you know, my children is that whatever you do is going to have consequences and ramifications. Absolutely. And so, if it is your desire to do some of the things that you see on social media or in music videos, then just know that there's a lineage of ramifications that come with that. And if you're prepared, and if that's what you want, if you want to be somebody who dances in videos, if you want to be someone who is exposing themselves to other things on social media, that is your right. That's your right to be layered, complex, if you want that type of attention. But just know what comes along with it. And so I don't put a judgment on it. I don't say it's not upstanding. What I do say, though, is that it has, you know, the same way if you hold yourself out to be an evangelist on social media and you're preaching or have all these quotes, right? But you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing at home. And you're not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing in the street, or somebody sees you in a moment, you know, in a moment where you're just having a human moment and you curse. Or you're in a human moment and you get into a fight with somebody. There's ramifications for whatever you put out. That's right. And so I think that, you know, having them have a very structured scaffold of what it means to make decisions and the ramifications that come with that.
Yeah. I think also, tap in, when we're thinking about from the 60s to now, outside of systematic stuff, being raised like Caribbean, a lot of everybody was married. Like I saw maybe like growing up for me, like I seen mom and dad together, even if they argue, even if
stuck it through.
Because I was either at Uptown, where it was Trini, Jamaican, a lot of African, different, you know, everybody African, but you know, different nations, and mom and dad was home. Yeah, you understand? So for me, even now we're in Ozone Park, where everyone is like homeowners, business owners. So I think what's happening is media, right? And this is why we got to come in and say, listen, no, this is not the true narrative, right? Because it's like a microscopic, it's too small of a sample size, right? And that even with like the research that Umazi was talking about, I wonder where it came from. Like, what sample size did you say? Because you gotta understand, there's like 50 million of us in the United
Exactly.
States, right? Like, out of all the black fathers, like, did you really interview all the black fathers? Like, and to me, like, all my homeboys are good fathers. All my homeboys is good people, right?
Right.
So when people say, you know, when it comes to our daughters, is what you exude, you get back, right? And that's our responsibility to say, this is what's going to be. Yeah. Speaking to lineage, speaking to ramifications, speaking to what's what. But we have that duty to start home.
Yeah.
Right? And show, like, I'm not perfect. I don't pitch perfect. I pitch progression.
That's right. Yeah.
Progression over, you know, like, I'm not the best dude. Like, you know, my first, I was engaged. It didn't work out. I went through the court system, right? Child support, everything, but I see my daughter 4 days out of the week.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And not only am I in negative with child support, I'm also super present. Right? So when it comes to that, it's really a situation, not only is she going to learn from me, being transparent that you're not going to stop this bond, right? But I need to know where these sample sizes coming from.
Yeah.
And what's happening is, because we're so enticed by negativity, the ones that's blabbing off about their situation is getting on the spotlight.
Yeah.
When it's pops like us, you got 3 gents, right? Literally 4 fathers right here. Right?
Right.
And we black.
We black.
We're cameras on, right?
We're present.
This is what,
to your point, there's nothing exceptional about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
There
a father is a
be,
father.
Right. Shouldn't be.
Right.
Right. And this is what I'm saying. Like somebody said, you a good bad dad. Like, what's that? I'm proud. I know I'm a proud dad. I'm super proud. Like, I love fatherhood because it changed my life.
Right.
I was a knucklehead. I was wild.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, but I had the conversation. He's like, "Oh, you're a great father." I'm like, "I'm a father."
Right.
You understand? Like, I'm stepping in.
Do people say you're a great mother? Have people ever say that? Like, because I feel like the expectation.
People
is
tell my
slightly
wife that.
different.
She is, though.
Okay. I feel like sometimes the reason I ask is because
Right.
I feel like sometimes the expectation is that while you're doing all these things with your child, so it's like, shouldn't I be doing all these things with my child? You know, shouldn't I show up to the school events and talk with the teachers? You know, and it's like, oh, Calvin's dad is present because he's always here. Calvin's mom is present because he's always here. It's like, now we parents.
Well, I do think I don't think that we should. I don't think we can gloss over the fact that there are many parents who aren't allowed. And I think that you both have 2 very unique perspectives, right?
Yeah.
You both are entrepreneurs, and so you kind of like maintain and manage your own hours, your own schedule, right? So you're allowed to be as present as you are. But there are some parents who don't have that flexibility.
Right.
And so, you know, there are fathers who literally are just working to pay bills, to take care of the bare necessities. Right. And so they're not as present, you know, in the spiritual and the emotional and the social sense as they are in terms of just paying bills. And I think that there does need to be a conversation about, you know, how do we equip young parents? How do we give, as people in this generation, I know I'm a lot older than you, but from your generation to my generation and your generation, how do we start equipping parents, fathers specifically, since we're focusing on fatherhood? Right. How do we start equipping them with the tools to prioritize the things that are going to make sense? And I think that that's where there's an opportunity. I don't think that there's necessarily a problem with black fathers, and there's a problem with toxic masculinity. There's a problem with systemic expectations on what humans can do, who humans can be. Right. But I think that if you feel like you have a proficient model for fatherhood, start replicating or passing those tools down to younger men in your community. And I think that you know, that's our responsibility, and I think that that's everyone's responsibility. Whatever you become proficient in, it's not for you. It's not for you to share. For you to share.
That's why I write too, man. Like I literally, there you go, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm like, I'm an advocate for fatherhood. Like, look at, you know, I'm 30. Right. Like, I just turned 30. right? Like,
And I'm 43.
You're
so-
40. You understand?
Yeah.
So like 40, so
He's like,
41.
I'm like,
41.
you don't necessarily. There's a lot of free things you could do with your kids. There's
Right.
so much.
Right.
My daughter don't remember when we went to Barney's. Like she
Yeah.
remember the bubble show.
Right.
Right? Like she remembers something free we did that
Right.
I found
Yeah.
online. So it's like
Something that you mentioned, Keith, was about, you know, because I think we see more and we hear more of the absent father as opposed to the fathers that, you know, are doing things. Because we're speaking
just
from
too busy.
We're speaking
making
from
it
our
happen.
experience of like we show up.
so I know
We hear the sample
I know
sizes
we
like-
have to wrap it up. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna end it like this, right? You typically don't know what you're missing until it's gone, and I think that the idea that a father is not in the home is much more perpetuated in society
Right.
because it is the idea that something's missing more than the idea that a father is in the home. That's normal, and so there's going to be less talk about fathers that are in the home that are actually being present
Right,
than the fathers who otherwise. And so I think that there's a whole bunch of systemic things to talk about. There's also a spin on it, but I do think that it's easier to talk about what's missing
That's
and what's
true.
not
Yeah,
missing.
yeah, yeah.
And
Good
so,
point. Very good point.
with that
Yeah.
said, we just want to say thank you for joining us at AURN Digital, and until next time.